Welcome to the Little Faith Podcast and happy 2026 to all of you out there. So far, so good. I hope it's treating you well. As for me, I didn't have a good starter for 2026. I had a serious cold during the countdown. And as you can probably hear, I still have this very raspy voice. It's not getting better. Still feeling a bit uncomfy. So you're going to have to put up with the voice throughout this episode. But once again, thank you very much for tuning in to the Little Faith Podcast. I am JR. And I just want to ask you, have you got the chance to see the animation film David yet? I've heard so much about this film already. And I actually first heard about this film through Rob Schneider, one of his short videos. So Rob Schneider was talking about allegedly, now I have to say allegedly, Disney and Paramount, they were pushing back on screen numbers in theaters for David. So this became like the real life David versus Goliath, right? Because Disney and Paramount, they're these huge hegemons in the industry, and they're trying to smother this little tiny studio called Angel Studios. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go in theaters and support David. If this is true, don't like what they're doing. I checked up the box office numbers, and as of current, David is the highest grossing faith-based animation film in history of all time. Wow, congrats to them. Great job. So I compared their box office numbers to Zootopia 2, and what I found was that in the Northern American market, the box office numbers, David has racked in 72 million US dollars compared to Zootopia 2's 368.7 million US dollars. There's quite a difference there, but it's something you would expect because it's Zootopia. Zootopia, the sequel, right? Disney, huge production. You would have guessed it. As for the international market, there's a bigger difference. Zootopia 2 has racked in a whopping 1.2 billion US dollars, which totally blows it out of the water for David, because David only racked in like less than $500,000 US dollars international wise. Now, you can expect that as well, too, because David is a faith-based animation film, and Christianity is mostly in Europe, in the Americas, and Northern America. And in Asia, it's not that big of a population, right? So you could see that coming, too. Now, I also compared it to the SpongeBob movie, which came out around the same time. And surprisingly, though, David beats out SpongeBob at the Northern American box office. Wow, that I did not see coming. However, it does lose out on the international box office, and that's something you would expect as well, because as I just said, David is a Christian faith-based film. Now, I went into theaters to support David, especially after hearing what Rob Schneider said. And you would ask me, how was your movie-going experience? So how was my movie-going experience? I heard a lot of great things about this film beforehand. I saw the trailer. The trailer was enticing. It was great. I love the trailer. But I have to say, I didn't walk in with high expectations. I've got to be honest with you. And it was not because I didn't have faith in the production house. That's not the case. It was just mostly because, I know the story already. I know the story inside out. I know it like the back of my hand. So I wasn't all exuberant. I wasn't all excited when I walked in the theaters. And I actually had to look up which theater was screening the film because there was only one theater screening it in my city. And when I went into theaters, there were only 4 people in the theater, including me and my friend. So you can't blame us because we're not that big of a Christian population here in Taiwan. All right. So you can't blame us for that. So I walked in and I came out with a bag of mixed feelings, I gotta say. There were things I liked about the movie. There were things I didn't like so much. So I'm gonna start with the things I liked. Let's always start with the good things, all right? And I really, honestly enjoyed the animation. I think the animation was top notch, was first tier. I really enjoyed it. So for instance, let's give you a few examples here. So like when the figures were standing under or against the sun, you could see the texture of their clothing, the hair, the skin. It's just very lively how they animated. It's very good, very delicately dealt with. And like during those vast landscape scenes, especially the battle scenes, it's very immersive. It gives you this very vivid Mideastern desert vibe, like it's surrounding you. I really love the animation. Once again, very delicately dealt with. And the music, I think the songwriting was good, the singing was good. Even though I have to say, I can't remember the songs right now. Like when you see Frozen, you would remember Let It Go, Let It Go. When you see Moana, you would remember How Far I'll Go, right? You would remember those songs. But when I left the theaters from David, those songs weren't that catchy, I would say. They didn't cling on to me that much. But still, good songs, good music. All right. So that's what I liked about the film. Now, what I didn't like about the film was that I liked the story. But I didn't like the storytelling. I thought there were still a lot of logical inconsistencies. There were some plot holes. Sometimes the situations, the plot just didn't make sense. It wasn't logical enough. And the music was good. I did mention that, but the timing of the music sometimes was kind of a bit off, I would say, in my very humble opinion. Sometimes the music placement was a bit awkward at times. It just didn't blend in, I thought. And of course, I think there was a little bit too much of aura farming for David. Like, for instance, at the beginning of the film, I know I'm being picky, all right? Bear with me. But at the beginning of the film, David is defending his sheep from a lion attack, and he somehow nudges the lion off a cliff, and it gets stuck between two rocks. But after that, after he protects his sheep, he goes back and he saves the lion. The very lion that attacked his herd, he released the lion. And I was like, no. Don't save the lion. Kill the lion. Don't release the lion. He's going to come back and haunt you. Well, he releases the lion, which is totally not what is written in the Bible. Because in the Bible, it says that David, to protect his sheep, he often killed bears and lions. He's a lion slayer. But now in the film, at the very beginning, you have this animal-friendly David, like this protagonist with all that aura and plot armor. So I was like, that's not closely following the biblical depictions. So I'm going to find fault with that. I know I'm nitpicking. My friend had to remind me, it's a children's film, for God's sake. And also at the very beginning of the film, you have this scene where Samuel anoints David at his father's house, right? And it's supposed to be a secret because they don't want people to know about it, even though Saul knows that there's someone out there to replace him. But somehow, like 5 seconds later, after his anointment, there's a soldier standing at the front door already, there to take David away to Saul. And as they go, he's like, he's going to eat you alive. And I thought that was just silly. Like, how did they find out where they were? Like, how did they know? How did they catch up so fast? I just thought it was silly. Doesn't make sense. All right, but anyways, and in the last scene, there was this last battle where the Israelites, they found out that the villagers had been captured by the Amalekites. So the Israelite soldiers, when they hear this, they're trembling. They're panicking. They get cold feet. And they blame David for it. They're not willing to put up a fight. They're not willing to go after the scavengers and to save the villagers. So David goes alone, and they try to talk him out of it. They say it's suicide, but David goes anyways. So David goes alone, and he catches up with the Amalekite army. And what he does is he starts singing. He starts singing, and he sings and walks into the Amalekite front line. And how am I not surprised? He gets knocked in the head, and he blacks out, passes out on the floor. Talk about a rescue. And as he passes out, the villagers, they start standing up one by one to finish his song. And one by one, they get knocked down by the captors. It was really kind of hilarious to that point, kind of silly. Like, talk about the stupidest and fastest way to get yourself killed. That was probably it. And then just when you think, okay, all hope is gone, everybody's going to get killed, all of a sudden, within a great flash of sunlight, which breaks the dark, the Israelite army arrives, all right? The army that was previously scared to death, now more ferocious than ever. They appear, and they're almighty, and they're like, charge, let's save him, let's save David. And the Amalekites with their army, and what they do is they run, they flee, and that's the end of the battle. And I was like, this just totally does not make a single bit of sense at all. Once again, I know I'm being too picky here. My friend once again had to remind me it's a children's film. But is it? Is it a children's film? Isn't it also made for adults like me? No? I'm not sure. But that's what I had to say about it. That's my 2 cents on this, all right? Now, I will say though, that there were a few moments that actually made me well up a bit in the theater. There was these moments where David, like, he's totally trusting in God, even in total despair, and even when Saul tries to kill him several times. And time again, he refuses to harm Saul when he had the chance to. And in each and every single battle, he totally relies on God and God alone. And that got me really thinking. Like, I really took that home with me. It got me thinking, like, I probably should rely on God more, like David. I should be like David. Because David, what he went through was war. He went through war. He went through life and death. His life was at stake, but still he showed absolute trust in God. So when I think of that, David went to the extremes with God. He trusted his life with God. Then what am I doing with my life? Like, why can't I entrust myself more to God, even in my minor situations in life, right? So that really hit home with me. And I actually took that home. After I got home to my room, I was still thinking, wow, I really should reflect upon my faith. I should be more like David. So I guess the moral of the story is that, first of all, God chooses not by appearance, and we should be thankful for that, because especially for people like me who are not that pretty looking, thank God you chose us. First of all, God chooses not by appearance. That is exactly how Samuel chose Saul for king in the beginning, because Saul was tall, he was good looking, almighty. And we have to say that in the beginning, actually, Saul was very obedient to God. But eventually, gradually, he went awry. He started becoming more self-centered. He started waging war without the permission of God through Samuel. He didn't wait for Samuel to pray to God, things like that. And in the end, God had to replace him. It wasn't like that God didn't love Saul. God loved Saul. God worked through Saul. But because he went awry, God had to replace him. Because being the king of a nation, he has that influence to influence all the people. So to lead the people, God had to replace Saul. So when it came to God's turn to choose, he chose by looking at the heart, because God knew David had a humble heart. God knew that David had a God-centered heart. And that is the reason why he chose him as the king of Israel to replace Saul. And of course, Saul got jealous of it. He started chasing after David, and that became the story of the film. Well, the real story in history, actually. Now, from David's point of view, no matter the obstacle, no matter the challenge, even to death, did he believe in God? Did he believe that God was his ultimate shelter? And it's really hard to fathom when we've never been through a life or death situation like David. But David really took it to the extreme. He showed absolute faith before God. And that is why God chose him and why God stayed with him throughout his lifetime. And that's probably what we should be striving for in faith. We should be more like David. So that's my takeaway from the film. Like, when I went home, I was like, I really need to level up my faith, rely on God more. We all need to become more like David. So that's me. I hope you had some takeaways from the film if you've seen it already or if you've just listened to this podcast. Once again, don't just take it from me. There's things I liked about it, didn't like about the film, but if you want to, go check it out in theaters yourself. David, currently the highest grossing faith-based animation film of all time. So that's some information for you. I hope you liked the episode. As always, God bless you. I will pray for you, and we will see you next episode. Bye-bye.